Okay, desktop. So, yeah, so I guess, and thanks to, okay, I'll open this. Wait, it's not letting me share it. So I'm sharing my.
Yael, sorry to interrupt, but you shared the doc just to me in the chat and not to everyone.
Oops, thank you.
Well, Zahava, you're very important.
No,
I take it as a compliment.
Thanks for catching that. I would have totally missed that. Okay, if I don't figure out how to, saying that my system preferences. Okay, let me try again. Desktop share. I don't know. I've shared this before. Okay, can everyone have access, and then they can just open themselves?
So you shared it. You shared it in the chat. If you want, I can share it on my screen from my end if you would like.
Here. Oh. Yeah. Do you want to just do that?
Yep. No worries.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about throughout the last 22 months, we've all had different experiences that we've never imagined, would have hoped we never would have had to do. Standing out for me was when I had a 6-week-old and was on mat leave, and it would have been the perfect opportunity to be with our family over Pesach and move out of our house altogether when we were still in Ottawa. And we had to, that was our first Pesach we ever made in March, or I guess April 2020. We didn't have all of our Pesach dishes even, so we had to Amazon Prime some corral dishes that we twiddled in the snow outside. In Ottawa, there was still plenty of snow in April. And then Daniel later, our shul in Ottawa, they had a small gift shop that was obviously closed, but he bought some Judaica for Pesach out of the back of the car, the back of the car of the lady who runs the gift shop there. So that was certainly a different experience. It was we joked it was like buying drugs out of the back of someone's trunk. Was how we set up our first Pesach. Rabbi Felder used to listen to his drushes on Zoom, and he spoke about how being at home and being stuck at home, it gave a bit more of the opportunity to appreciate some of the things that we experiences we wouldn't have had. And a lot of young families like myself hadn't hosted Pesach or hadn't had some of those opportunities, and have going through the last almost 2 years has brought out a lot and shown us how much we can get appreciating the Yom Tovim from our homes with our immediate family, even though we miss celebrating sometimes together as a larger community and with our extended families. But now at least that we've started and hopefully we'll continue to come back together already virtually and even more so in person, we can take with what we've gathered and what we've learned and kind of hopefully try to have the best of all the worlds. Yeah, it was for us, it was that Pesach, and then also that first Yom Kippur, we were actually in isolation because my youngest had a fever. So at least I was married to a chazan, and we had nice davening at home in our living room for Kol Nidre. And we had a non-Jewish neighbor check his results so we could go to shul the next day. Anyway, so on Hanukkah, there is a special focus on the home. Coming from the Gemara in the first source. So I guess, does someone want to volunteer to read the first source, number 1, or do you prefer I do? Maybe it'll be nicer if someone else reads, so it's not just my voice tonight, but if no one else wants to, I can do it too.
Sure, I'll do it first if you want.
Sure.
My broken Aramaic will make it easier for other people to volunteer afterwards. Tanu Rabbanan mitzvat Chanukah ner ish uveito vehamahadrin ner lechol echad ve'echad ve'mahadrin min ha'mahadrin beit Shammai omrim yom rishon madlik shmona mikan ve'elach pochat ve'holech ubeit Hillel omrim yom rishon madlik achad mikan ve'elach mosif ve'holech. In English also?
I think, well, I can paraphrase. So so Tana Rabbanan, so in the Braita we learn, so Hanukkah, we light Ner Ish Uveto, that a candle for a person in their household. And the Mahadrin, if you want to do it extra special, Ner L'Kol Achad, and one candle for everyone. The Mahadrim and an even higher elevation, Beit Shammai says the first day we do 8, and then we take away 1 every day. Uveit Hillel Omrim, we take 1 and we add each night. So, here's where, so the word, so every, in the Brisa, every word has a meaning and is there for a purpose. So the fact that it has Uveta is coming specifically to teach us something. So with different mitzvah, we have some that are what we would call a mitzvah on the gavra, the mitzvah on the person himself, that no matter what the circumstance or wherever the person is, that mitzvah stands and is valid. So, some examples for that would be like eating matzah on the 15th of Nisan. No matter where you are, that is a mitzvah that you're obligated in. Another example would be on the 8th day, there's a mitzvah to do a bris, no matter what circumstance you're in. Other mitzvahs are more of a situational, conditional mitzvah. So something like a mezuzah, having a mezuzah on your house, you only have to do that if you have a house, or putting tzitzis on your four-cornered garment. If you're not wearing a four-cornered garment, that mitzvah doesn't apply. So what I'm going to speak a little bit more about is the mitzvah of Hanukkah candles, is it something that no matter where you are, what situation you're in, applies? Or is it something that is only if you have a house in your own house? So if you could scroll down just to see Olive Source 2. And sorry, it's not the best. I was a little bit lazy to find sources online or to type them out. So I took photos of some of our Sfarim and then cut them out using photo edits. So the Rambam, and so here, this is a little bit hard to read, so I'll read it. So the Rambam in Hilchot Brachot defines different types of mitzvah. So the definition between mitzvah, a chova and a reshut. So a chova is something that you're obligated in, and reshut is something that you can do. So yes, mitzvah aseh she'adam chayav lishtadel v'lirdof ad she'yaseh otan kegon tefillin, sukkah, lulav, shofar, ve'elu hen nikarin chova. So there's certain mitzvot that no matter what, like you have to do them and you should reach out, and that would be, they're not a conditional mitzvah. So things like hearing shofar, putting on tefillin. לפי שאדם חייב על כל פנים לעשות. ויש מצוות שאינה חובה אלא דומים לרשות, כגון מזוזה ומעקה, שאין אדם חייב לשכון בבית החייב מזוזה, כדי שיעשה מזוזה. אלא אם רצה לשכון כל ימיו באוהל או בספינה ישב. So that's exactly what I was just talking about before. So if you wanted to spend your whole life in a tent or in a boat, you don't have to have a mezuzah. So you don't have to build a house in order to do the mitzvot that are applying to a house, like putting a gate around it, around the roof. The kol mitzvot aseh she'en sheben adam l'makom ben mitzvah she'ena chava ben mitzvah she'i chava levarach aleh kodem la'aseita. Okay, so that's the bracha. We're just going to skip over that. So in Gimel, v'ken kol mitzvah shehen midivrei sofrim. So mitzvot that are from the rabbis, from Dirabanan, and ben mitzvah shehi chova midivreihan. So even if we're so the ones that we'd be obligated on, kigon mitzvah megillah, v'hadlakat ner b'shabbat, v'hadlakat ner b'chanukah, ben mitzvah sheina chova, kigon eruv netilat yadayim, mevarach al hakol kodem lasitam asher kitonu l'mitzvah b'tzivanu. So here the Rambam is giving an example of a mitzvah that is dirabanan from the rabbis, that would be chova, is lighting Hanukkah candles. So it's saying that Hanukkah candles isn't the same as, well, it's not the same as mezuzah because it's dirabanan, it's from the rabbis, it's not from the Torah, it's not from Doraita, but it's it's something that is derabanan but a chova. It's not just reshut, that it's not doesn't just apply if you have a house, but it's really a chova, the same way lighting Shabbos candles and listening to Megillah. So that's what I wanted to talk. So that's from the Rambam. And then, the fact that you're obligated in the mitzvah, even if you don't have a house, is also brought down in the Gemara in the story of an Achsenai. Achsenai is someone who is a traveler, a guest. So if you can just scroll down so we can see all of three. So Amar Rav Sheshet, Achsenai Chayav B'ner Chanukah. So a guest is obligated to light Hanukkah candles. Amar Rabbi Zera, Maresh Ki Havena Be'Rav, Mishtatatfna Bifrite Bahade Ushpiza, Batar Din Seve Itata, Amena Hashata Vadai La Trichna, Deka Madlike Alai Begoy Vetai. So, when he was, a story about Rabbi Zera, that when he was studying in yeshiva, he would give money to the host, whoever's house he was staying at. He didn't have his own house. He was staying in, it was before they would have dorms. You would stay at people's houses. So that way he could be a partner in the Hanukkah candles. He would give physical money. And once he got married and had his own house, he didn't, even when he would be not at home, you didn't have to do that because his wife would light on his behalf. So that I won't get into so much about someone else lighting on your behalf, but the fact that even if you don't have a house, it's not that you don't have to do the Hanukkah candles, you still do it, but you have to participate in another way by giving money to whoever's house you're staying at. Let's go down. Okay. Okay. So the Rambam. So what's interesting about, between Ashkenazim and Sephardim, so normally by the Sephardim, they follow the Rambam, but what's interesting here is actually so Sephardim light most Sephardim will light one Chanukah, one Chanukiah for the whole house. Whereas the minhag for Ashkenazim is that you'll light one for every person. So what's interesting is that here, like the minhag for the Sephardim actually doesn't go by the Rambam. So the Rambam here in Hilchot Chanukah talks about, sorry, I'm just gonna look at what someone wrote in the show. Thank you for sharing how did you get the translation from the Rambam? So if the Rambam in Hilchos Chanukah talks about, brings down how many candles we're supposed to light, or how many Chanukahs we're supposed to light. So kama nerat hu madlik b'Chanukah, mitzvata sheyeha kol bayit v'bayit madlik ner echad, ben shehayu anshe habayit merubin, ben shelo haya bo ela adam echad. So every person would light one Chanukiah, the Mahadir, but if you want to do an elevated level of the mitzvah, Madlik Nerot Kaminyan Anshe Habayit, Ner L'Kol Echad V'Echad, Ben Anashim, Ben Nashim. So, but a higher level is that everyone would have their own Chanukiah or menorah. The Mahadir Yoter, Al Zevo Se Mitzvah Ben Mitzvah Mina Muvchar Madlik Ner L'Kol Echad B'Laila Rishon Umosif Oholech B'Chol Laila V'Laila Ner Echad. So then the highest level is that everyone has their own, but that you're adding one for every night. So that's what we do. We're doing, that's the Beit Hillel that you're adding for every night, the highest level, but every person is still lighting their own. And then, so the Ramah brings us down too. So Hegev v'yeshomrim kol echad mibnei bayit yadlik. So everyone should light from the Rambam. This Rambam we just quoted. V'ken minhag pashut v'yizharu litan l'kol echad ve'echad neratav b'makom miyuchad kadei sheyehe kama nerot kadei sheyehe haker kama nerot madlikin. So what he adds in is that every person is lighting, but that we make sure that they're separated enough so that you can tell how many candles everyone's lighting to correspond to the number of days, but everyone is still lighting their own Chanukiah in the house. And then the Tosfot. So the Tosfot is where the Sfardim follow. So Hamahadrin mina Hamahadrin near Ale Rabbi Yitzchak to Beit Shammai Beit Hillel the Kaime Ele Aner Yeshuveta Sheken Yesh Yoter Hidur Deika Hikra Kishemosif Holech Omechaser שהוא כנגד ימים הנכנסים או היוצאים, אבל אם עושה נר לכל אחד, אפילו יוסיף מכאן ואילך, להקרא שיסברו שכך יש בני אדם בבית. So the Tosfot actually says, no, you don't do a new one for every, you don't do one for everyone in the house, because then it'll be confusing that you won't be able then to see how much you're adding for each day, and that if there's for every person in the household, then that gets confusing between the adding on additional for each day. So the Tosfot is where the Sfardim take it from and follow, just to do one for each household. So still with all of that, there's the emphasis on the house. The Sfardim really only one for that whole household. But even, of course, by Ashkenazim, even if you don't have a house, you still have to participate in some way, either by contributing financially to the person, or if we're going out to someone else's house for the evening, still lighting in our own house afterwards. One last Gemara on Shabbos I'll share. So in some places we would do so in Israel, we have the Chanukiah outside. Tanu Rabbanan ner Chanukah mitzvah linacha al petach beito mibachut. So that the Chanukiah would be outside the house, from the outside, the im dar ba'aliyah, and if he was upstairs, manicha b'cholon hasmucha l'reshut harabim, you leave it by the window. Ubishat sakana manicha al shulchana vidoy, but if it's a time of danger, keep it inside on your table. So Rashi on here says mibachutz mishum pirsumei nisa, so that way there's more pirsumei nisa. V'lo birshut harabim ela bechatzro. So it's, don't just have it in the public area, it should be in your chatzer, in your courtyard, right outside your house. Shebehechan hayu p'tuchim chatzer. So even if you're having it outside your house, it still has to be somehow connected to your house, because it all is coming from ner ish uveta. So you want to have it outside for pirsumei nisa. You can't just have it in a public area. It still has to be outside beside your house, emphasizing how important the house was. I know, at least in our house, I don't know about those of you with young kids, our goal is, never mind how many we're lighting, but just to make sure no one's getting burned, especially with my little guy who sees his older sisters doing it and is saying, my turn, my turn. So, in that sense, I'm not lighting my own, since my goal is just to make sure no one gets a burn at night. But it's definitely, hopefully this year we've been able to celebrate and be with our extended families and communities, but still enjoying the special light that comes out of being at home together and sharing that light with others in our community. I know, this year living somewhere in a bit more of a larger Jewish community and walking back from the subway, sometimes from Viewmount, walking home and seeing the other Chanukiahs and appreciating the light that other people have in their windows has been something special for us. So yeah, thank you for joining. I know it was short, but yeah, any questions or any thoughts or?
I'm interested in the original. So in the original Gemara, it seems sort of ambiguous whether the machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel is referring to a single menorah or a menorah for everybody, right? So there's a question about, okay, is it one? Is it one for everybody? And then is option 3 a whole menorah for everybody or just one whole menorah. And I've always found that ambiguous, and it's interesting to see the Rishonim that you bring sort of interpret that in both ways. But I'd never thought before about how one whole menorah could be seen to be more household tied than a menorah for everybody, because the a menorah for everybody approach, I can take my menorah wherever I am, right? The fact that I have a menorah and my spouse has a menorah, and presumably one day my child will be safely able to handle fire and will have a menorah themselves instead of one made out of popsicle sticks. Like if it's attached to you specifically, then you could be anywhere. So it seems almost like paskening that the third portion of the Gemara, the third option in the Gemara, is one menorah, one entire 8-candle menorah for the entire household, is a greater emphasis on the household in a way that I had never really appreciated before.
Right. Well, but even if one person has their menorah and can take it everywhere, you still can't. You still have to be yotze, where you're at least sleeping at night. No.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I guess the question is, does household, like the sort of Hebrew ambiguity of bayit meaning like a physical place, and also the collection of people and animals sometimes that all go together in a household sense. Like, does that ner ish ubeto imply a cohesiveness of household as opposed to just sort of the incidental place where you're living or home?
Right. Maybe. Yeah, like maybe it when there's only one menorah, then it's more of a emphasis on the home. Yeah.
Right. It sounds like Zahava is trying to define what the home is. Is the home the physical structure? Is it the family unit, or is it each individual piece? Like which part of that makes it into a home? Like if you leave the physical structure, if all of you leave, do you all need to light together somewhere else? Does each person have to light where that individual is sleeping? Like I think it's a broader question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never thought of it that way. It's something. Anyone else with thoughts on Zahava's point? Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the differences of practice later on imply that there's that the ambiguity is sort of broadly seen, right? That really isn't a particularly clear statement on what the lighting unit is in a way. Like the best way to do it could be everyone individual, like the Mahadran Mina Mahadran, the best way to do it could it be everyone's individual menorah or a household menorah. And there's a philosophical nafkamina to that I had never appreciated before. And just sort of reflecting back to your original framing about COVID and the experience, helping us appreciate what it means to do things internal to the household versus external. Maybe that's especially salient for a mitzvah that's really about other people seeing it, right? Mm-hmm. That's something so literally outward facing. And COVID has made us so inward facing. And thinking about what it means that the Ner Ishu Beito concept might be explicitly household based, even at a time when we're doing something so outward facing. It's just a really interesting interplay.
Yeah, except even like I don't know how much in Toronto, but even in Ottawa, March and April, the thing was everyone drawing on their windows, pictures of rainbows and messages of hope, and drawing on their driveways, and the activity would be going for walks and appreciating the different drawings kids made. So that is very much what I guess here it's a little bit worse weather, but if we do go on walks or even driving by our neighborhoods and seeing, look at how many candles, like my daughter right across the street, one of her classmates. So we see who was first one night and who lit their candles. So appreciating each. So even though we're in our own homes, seeing and getting joy from what other people are doing from their own household unit, and sharing the simcha that way, and sharing the ness.
Questions or comments? Yael, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. It's really wonderful to have you back in Toronto. And we are looking forward to many more opportunities to engage with you and hear you speak. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a wonderful last evening of Hanukkah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.